Schultz, John Spake, and my name is Dan Musil. I need to reiterate though, I mean, we're here not because, we're here to kind of help things along, but we're not the only people pulling the wagon. So if you guys have ideas, or if you have a talent or treasure to share with the Tea Party, please step forward and help out, okay? We've got huge issues in Illinois, we've got huge issues nationally, and we all have to be pulling together. With that, I guess we'll go to Ken with some news on the fundraising issues. Oh, Randy Freeze just walked in, candidate for state senator. Kim Holmes.
Ryan Niekamp.
Thank you, Dan.
Ryan Niekamp.
Ryan Niekamp is here. Well, one of the things that we definitely want to do is we want to try to raise some money so that we got some money in the account to try to do some things in the next 6 months. We're going to have candidates that we're going to, try to support. And of course, like I say, the Tea Party itself may not actually come out and endorse individuals or whatever, but as a group, we're going to have certain people that we're going to try to get behind. We want to try to do that. As far as the fundraising goes, I think we have kind of, I don't want to say bit off a pretty big chunk here or whatever, but we have a goal. We would like to try to raise about $5,000 in the next 3 to 4 months. John will be up here in just a little bit. John Spake, and he'll explain a little bit about the gun raffle. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty successful thing. We're going to try to get out and advertise and basically get a little bit more involved and do a few more things. And we need to do that. We need to have money to do that. We have little stuff like, we have our shirts and our signs, excuse me, and our flags or whatever. But we're going to try to kind of kick it into high gear and do a little bit more, and maybe join forces with Ad Force or whatever and do a lot more advertising or whatever. One of the things, kind of change subject here just a little bit, we all are concerned with the way the state of Illinois has been going and how things going there in the Capitol or whatever. And I'd like to see a show of hands of anybody here that has contacted their state representative or their senator and at least voiced their opinion as to what they wanted on some of these issues. Okay, I'm very glad to see that. And I just wanted to ask Jill Tracy herself there, how much does that mean to you when you get some correspondence from people?
Oh, it means everything. It really does. It helps. It helps.
Okay, because I'm sure that, and like I say, I was really, really glad to see a show of hands. Sometimes, we kind of get labeled as, the Quincy Tea Party. We're really not doing anything, what's going on, what direction you're going, this and that. Well, my own personal opinion is we're becoming much more organized. We're doing a lot better job. And I'll tell you one thing, come November, they'll still know who in hell Tea Party is. I did want to say one other side note. Lyle Nichols wrote an article to the Herald Whig. It's been about, 2-3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, or whatever. And you basically put everything in that article concerning the Adams County Board and the money that they were going to increase the salaries and stuff like that. And I told myself, I thought, if anybody was going to do anything, the Republican Party should lead the way. And if anything, they should either freeze their salaries or they should take a reduction. Well, at any rate, John Highbrader, I believe, and I'm sure that Lyle had a lot to do with it, they backed off and changed their mind. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. And I think that's really about it for me. John, would you like to come up? You want to wash your hands first? I'll let John kind of go over the gun raffle here or whatever. But we do want everybody to be involved. We want you to do as much as you can. Sometimes we'd like to lead, but we also need to have people help us to get our message across and to do what it needs to be done. I'll take this time too to make one other announcement here real quick. Now Terry Carey is trying to get something going here as far as the, it's the Constitution. She's going to have, would you like to talk a little bit at all about it, Terry? Would you like to say? Okay. Sure. This is another one of our, I guess you'd say one of our fundraisers, but let Terry explain. She can do better than I can.
Hi there. Again, Glenn was down in Memphis for the fair tax event a couple of months ago, and he met a gentleman that does Constitution refresher courses. And he talked with him, I talked with him, and he is available, and that is Constitution, our Constitution month. On your tables there are some flyers. Last year we did at the Elks a educational day in September, and this is going to be similar, and this is going to be on the 8th. We will have our tea party day earlier in the month, but it'll be from 9 to 3, and the flyers are pretty self-explanatory, but we have an expert in our midst that always knows very much about the Constitution and who, what, and where, and why, and there was actually a failure with the first plan, and these are all things that this gentleman does, so we can sharpen our horns and get a little bit more educated like Jeff is. And it's going to be $25 per person. There'll be coffee and donuts in the morning, and we know our Constitution is getting slapped the heck out of a lot, and we want to see that it's, we know we're educated about it. So the flyers are really there and on the tables, and either Glenn, myself, or Kenny, the $25 on that, and I think it'll be a great day as far as getting ourselves more educated on our Constitution of the United States, and that month is Constitution Day 2. Okay.
Yes, it is. That's correct.
Okay, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to John here, let him kind of explain the gun raffle.
Well, we decided one of the things we want to do is to raise some money for the Tea Party, is to have a gun raffle. And we're going to have 2 different raffles. My gun shop, it's called Castle Arms, is donating the rifles. One is a Rock River AR-15 rifle. Those will be $20 a ticket. We're going to limit those to 100 tickets. And then there's a digital pink camo 22 caliber pistol. So I picked that maybe appeal to a different crowd. Those are being limited to 100 tickets at $10 each. So these are what the tickets will look like. We didn't get them printed up in time for tonight. They'll go on sale tomorrow. But if anybody wants to buy some tickets tonight, we can see Mary Beth over here at the table, and we can start processing. You can fill out a temporary ticket, and we'll transfer it over to a permanent ticket. These we'll sell the tickets until they sell out, and once they sell out, then we'll have a drawing. So, and then as far as, if you're an Illinois resident, you have to have a FOID card if you're the winner. If you win and you don't have a FOID card, I'll be glad to hang on to it until you get one, and then I can do the transfer.
John, can they just get a hold of the board member for tickets? Or?
I think the board will be selling tickets, and we'll probably pick a few other people that are willing to go out in the general public to sell some. Anybody that's willing will have to be responsible for the tickets they get. All right. Terry?
Okay. Now, we're all here tonight for lots of education and knowledge. We've been watching and listening on the television, the radios, of what's been going on in Springfield, and internet and everything. And it is my pleasure, and I don't know, are you going to both, can I introduce you both together? Come on up here, please. Christina Rasmussen is from Springfield, and she's with the Illinois Policy Institute. And Christina, I have known since, you have changed. So, Christina, I have known since 2009. We were in Springfield the first time when we did the first Tea Party, actually, when they were working on the budget in 2009, that May 4th, I believe it was. So we are very fortunate to have her because they're working on these budget solutions, and David Fromm, who is from Americans for Prosperity. And Christina was coming first, and they joint ventured and have put this together that they're going to be going around the state. I think we're the first ones, aren't we? Second one. So it's with great honor that I introduce and welcome them both. So let's all give them a Quincy welcome and help us know what we need to be doing.
I think I'm going to go first, so I'll just pop on up here. Thanks, Mary. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Christina Rasmussen. Can you all hear and see me? If you're sitting in the back and you have a hard time seeing this presentation up here, I'd strongly recommend you reorient yourself, just because we're going to be walking through a lot of complex policy ideas in a short amount of time, and I want to make sure you can stick with me as we use this presentation to bring those ideas to life. I am the Executive Vice President of the Illinois Policy Institute, and I'm actually based out of Springfield, Illinois. My family is there, my husband, my twin baby girls, 17 months, twin toddlers, it's quite a handful. And I'm not originally from Minnesota, Illinois. I'm from Minnesota, and I have been working out in Washington, D.C. for many years as a federal lobbyist working on taxpayer issues. And right about the time that Obama was coming to Washington, D.C., my CEO, John Tillman, said, "You think the federal government has problems? Wait till you see what's in store in Illinois. Why don't you come back this way? We're sending enough Illinoisans to D.C. Come back this way and fight the good fight in Illinois." So I took up the charge. And as you know, Illinois has many fiscal problems. You read the headlines daily. This has been an ongoing problem for many, many years. There's a reputation for inefficiency, or at the very least, unaccountability. Deficits are being racked up. The unpaid bill backlog is growing, not shrinking. And so I took John up on the challenge, came here to Springfield, and I arrived in town in 2009, just a few days before Governor Quinn made his first attempt to pass the income tax increase. And I was using that opportunity to go around and introduce myself to legislators, let them know about the Illinois Policy Institute, how we're a free market think tank. And I had a lot of legislators say, "You know, Christina, it's so nice that you're all about free market policy, but this tax hike, it's going to pass. And there is nothing you can do about it. So, you know, maybe go focus on something else." And I said, heck no, we're going to fight. These are principles worth fighting for. A tax hike in the middle of a recession would be an awful idea. It would make Illinois uncompetitive, and it would send the wrong signal as other states were working to balance their budgets in a crisis through sensible spending cuts. So we fought, and we won. For 2 years, that tax hike went nowhere, and it saved the taxpayers of the state billions of dollars. Now, a lot of folks will say, fine, you don't want to hike taxes? What's your solution? You've got to have a credible alternative. So my first big project at the Illinois Policy Institute was to put together an alternative budget that showed how you could get back to a place of fiscal sanity without a tax increase. And ever since then, we have issued an annual alternative budget backed up by policy ideas that we think make the numbers work without a tax hike. So tonight, I'd like to walk you through Budget Solutions 2013. This is our 4th annual alternative budget. It's based on 3 policy areas, and beneath that we have 9 specific ideas. Now, the entire point of this is to try to get to a place where the budget balances. We don't have to rely on that tax hike. We meet our pension liabilities. We're not engaging in more borrowing. And really, we're treating taxpayers with the respect they deserve. And at the same time, trying to do better by the people who rely on government, the poor and disadvantaged, the people who need help. So I'd like to thank, before I get started, I'd like to thank our host, the Quincy Tea Party, for this opportunity to present to you. It's really a privilege, and to join up with Americans for Prosperity. They're an amazing group doing great work. So I really appreciate your time and attention tonight. So Chris here, my colleague, is going to help us walk through the presentation. And why don't we go ahead and get started with a little bit of context. So you all just heard what I said, that years of overspending in the state has put us on a spiral of decline. We have $8.5 billion in unpaid bills, and the operational budget has outgrown our population growth by 85% over the last 20 years. And Illinois is, going forward, like I just mentioned, Illinois' fiscal decline was highlighted by in a series of really bad news in 2011. Moody's credit rating downgraded us to one of the worst ratings in the country, even behind California, and that's saying something. Last year, Illinois sent more people to the unemployment line than any other state in the nation. Even as all these states here with green arrows were putting people back to work, we were putting people on the unemployment line. And then last year, people decided to respond by voting with their feet. We lost 66,000 residents to other states, the latest in a long trend of people leaving for better opportunities elsewhere. We're simply not competitive enough anymore when it comes to offering people a place where they want to live and work. But there is a way to stop this decline. There is a plan to help Illinois become #1 in job creation and #1 in economic opportunity. There is a plan to help the poor and disadvantaged when and where they need it most. And there is a plan to make Illinois a better place. We think that this is the plan. Go to the next slide. Now, before any of the reforms can be taken that we're going to go into tonight, we have to understand that we need to rein in the spending power. Illinois needs a real, effective, balanced budget requirement. Right now, the one we have is used and abused far too often. Our current spending caps really are out of touch with fiscal reality. And unbelievably, our spending caps are higher than our projected revenue. So we're allowed to spend more than we're bringing in. That is not a spending cap. Now, until this problem is addressed, we're just going to keep spending beyond our means. It's been done enough as it is, and we actually have the 3rd highest debt per capita ratio in the nation. We think that once lawmakers are forced to face the constraints of fiscal discipline, we can finally begin to get Illinois out of this spiral and headed back towards prosperity. So we tried to come up with a plan that would save $7 billion. We need to be saving that money so we can pay back old dues, as well as get to the point so when that income tax hike is supposed to sunset in 2015, we can actually do it without blowing a hole in our budget. Of course, that was promised when they hiked taxes on you, but they're not necessarily keeping that promise so far. So really, the $7 billion plan is based around 3 sets of reforms. And the areas that we focus on are this. 1, we want to make spending more transparent and accountable to you, the taxpayer. 2, we think there are ways to make spending more sensible. And 3, we need to realign spending with our economic reality. So our first set of reform has to do with that accountability and transparency as funds are shifted around from the local level to the state level and the state level back to the local level. When the state picks up local government tabs, it encourages more spending by local governments. There's a disconnect between who's giving the money and who's making the decisions how it's spent. And this spending may not always reflect the will of the people in those districts just because money is being handed out by the state government. Now, here are 3 examples of that in play and what we think we can do about them. So today, spending at the state level is complex, especially when it comes to school funding. And we have a school board here who's very familiar with that. School funding increases in this state have outpaced increases in student enrollment. And this is because the general state aid formula, commonly known as the GSA, is supposed to ensure that every student in a district has a base amount of money that has been provided, but the system has been abused. Right now, GSA money from the state is used to bypass community-imposed spending caps or to indirectly subsidize these economic development tools known as tax increment financing districts or TIFs. And really this distorts transparency and accountability. We believe that reforming GSA so that it only spends money on education rather than backfilling TIFs or trying to skirt around property taxes could save Illinois $1.1 billion. Now, our next objective is something called local pension accountability. This is, you might have heard about, it actually came up in the last few days of the General Assembly. One of the good tenets of good accounting is that costs should be paid where they are incurred. Yet right now, Illinois is paying for teacher pensions even though teachers are school district employees, not state employees. And this has created a mixed set of incentives that encourages local salary spiking to increase pensions, along with sweeteners and abuses that you hear about in the newspapers. We believe that placing pension costs where they're incurred will help restore accountability in state spending. Districts will need to be responsible for the pensions that they hand over to their employees, and we think that this could save the state $800 million. Finally, in this section, there's a concept called the Local Government Distributive Fund. It's a tax sharing program that reduces transparency and accountability, shuffles money all over the state, and we think is a subsidy to local governments who don't necessarily want to live within the tax rates locally imposed by voters. And we think that eliminating it would help restore some of that accountability and transparency and save the state $1.6 billion. So that's the first set of reforms based on accountability. Let me go into the next set of reforms, what we call sensible spending. Trying to rein in wasteful spending and make sure that money is being spent on those who need it. First target here, Medicaid. A lot of you have probably heard about this in the newspaper. Enrollment in this state on Medicaid has ballooned by more than 80% since 2000. It's no longer helping just the most vulnerable. And as coverage expands, those who need it most are crowded out. So we need to revisit eligibility requirements to try to reverse this trend. I think it would be smart to transition to a premium assistance program where we can get the people who need the help the most better coverage, so they actually have coverage and care, and not just a ticket to nowhere because there are no doctors who will be able to see them. We think this helps put the poor and vulnerable back in the front of the line. We thought it would save the state $1.7 billion transitioning to a premium system just for certain groups. There are additional savings to be found in this area. Of course, anyone who read the Wall Street Journal this morning learned that here in Illinois, we found some savings, but then they decided to fill the rest of it with a cigarette tax, as well as some budget shuffling. Now, Mr. Mays was very kind enough to drive me across the border today, and as we were buying gas and cigarettes, and we didn't pick up any liquor, although we should have when we were over there, we calculated that a tax, once this tax increase is in place, a smoker or someone who's buying cigarettes can save over $18 a carton just by crossing that border. Incentives matter, policy matters, and I'm not a smoker, I've never smoked, but I know that it's a declining revenue source, and Medicaid is a growing program, and that general taxpayers will be on the hook to make up the remaining dollars as cigarette revenues decrease. So let's go on to the next policy idea. This is the idea of competitive grant funding. A huge chunk of the Illinois budget is handed out via grants to various organizations. Now, a lot of these grants are small, under $5 million, and a lot of work does get done by nonprofits. But as we found through FOIA, there's very little transparency and accountability with how this money is spent out. Often it's just carrying over last year's budget lines to this year. And it's not really necessarily looking at who's getting the best results, what are the highest priorities. Rather, it's who got money last year and who hired a lobbyist this year. So we thought we could take the $350 million of those grants under $5 million, when you sum it up, and put something together called competitive grant funding, so that groups would have to compete for a smaller pot of money, with the idea being that the folks who really deserve it would have access to it. We thought that this would save going on $200 million. So that is our second set of reforms. Let's go to the third piece of the puzzle, what we call realignment with reality. We have promised a lot in state retiree health care benefits to government workers, and we have not put hardly any money aside to fund these. You all know about the pension problems. This is the very inconvenient, very dangerous balloon that is about to burst along with pensions. State retirees, if they've worked for the government long enough, pay almost nothing towards their premiums. Now, this kind of a deal is practically unheard of in the private sector, yet it's a very nice perk that's handed out to state employees. And we think that it's time for state retirees to contribute to their premiums and cap them, so that if you're a retired governor, you're getting less premium assistance than, say, the guy who cut grass for 30 years for the state. We projected that this would save near on $425 million. Our next area is in the area of human services, and I have to say, we're a nonprofit. We don't take any government money, but I know a lot of nonprofits who do take public assistance to further their mission, and state government is an awful partner to them because they don't get paid on time, they get promises and then they're strung out. And it's hard for nonprofits. So I think it's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about how the civil sector, the private sector community should step up and help fund these services rather than relying on the deadbeat partner of government. Additionally, we found that there's a lot lacking in terms of accountability and transparency in this spending as well. So we decided to reduce funding in our budget to a sustainable level so that the people who were promised money actually got it on time and they weren't shuttering their doors because they were waiting 6, 7, 8 months and more to get paid. Our next suggestion is probably our most controversial. This one doesn't go down well with everybody, but it's the idea of right-sizing public employee pay. Many of you know that it's out of sync with levels commonly seen in the private sector. We found state barbers making over $70,000. Well, the average wage for a barber is closer to $30,000 in the private sector. And after adjusting for inflation, we found that government wages and salaries increased about 13% between 1993 and 2008. And during this same time, private sector wages, when adjusted for inflation, actually decreased by about 2%. So to restore some balance, we suggested reducing public employee pay by 10% to save the state $520 million. And then our final section has to do with cost of living increases adjusted for public employee pensions. Government workers who were hired prior to 2011 have been awarded generous cost of living increases. They're called COLAs. Right now it's 3% compounded. And the practical effect of that is that after 10 years in retirement, state retirees are often making more from their pensions than they made the last day on the job. That is the power of compounding interest. So we have suggested moving from a 3% compounded to a 2% simple COLA, and this could save Illinois at least $120 million a year. These are our proposals. We've got 3 areas: increase accountability, spend smarter, and realign spending to match up with economic realities. Altogether, these reforms offer $7 billion in savings. Now, these are not the only saving ideas out there. There have been plenty of more suggestions made by other organizations to find additional savings. Sometimes people say, well, these changes are impossible. They can't be done for this way or that way. But if I've learned one thing in Illinois politics over the past 3 years, anything is possible when the folks in charge decide it should be so. And we need to remember that there's a reason we're doing this. Is because we're competing with 49 other states. We are not alone in facing these budget challenges, but there are 9 states: Missouri, Ohio, New Jersey, Maine, Idaho, Oklahoma, Kansas, Indiana, and Nebraska, who are reducing or repealing their income taxes to attract people and investment. They understand that lower taxes make them more competitive, which in turn spurs economic growth. I just want to run through a few things that our sister states are doing, just so you can be inspired and know that there are good things happening out there. Wisconsin, and I think we're all checking our phones tonight to see what happens with Governor Walker, goes to $2.9 billion deficit in 2011 and 2012. Missouri has reduced spending by $1.6 billion since 2008. Indiana, with Governor Daniels, went from 7 successive years of budget deficits to having $1.3 billion in reserves. In Florida, they're working to reduce the burden on taxpayers by cutting $2.9 billion from their budget. Georgia introduced zero-based budgeting, which requires agencies to justify their funding increases and not just assume that they're going to get more every year. New Hampshire reduced spending to close a $40 million budget gap, and Democrat-controlled Rhode Island implemented pension reforms, saving the state with one of the worst funded pension systems, much like us, $3 billion. Now we think it's our turn. Illinois tried raising taxes, and in a year where we have record revenue, they're still having trouble making the numbers add up. And we think there's a different approach available, where you can save the state serious amounts of money, where if you put in those spending caps in place that actually mean something, and a balanced budget requirement that doesn't allow us to push off costs into future years, you can end the cycle of overpromising and overspending. All these other states are doing it. We think that you can rebuild Illinois' reputation to be a great state, a state where people want to live and do business. Now, our approach at the Illinois Policy Institute is to transform liberty-based principles into marketable policies that become law. And we think the ultimate sign of success is when free market ideas are turned into law and change your life for the better. And now, what does this look like? When individuals and businesses become more prosperous without fear of government favoritism or interference, where families can choose a high-quality education that fits their children's needs, and where citizens respect their government because it is open and transparent to all. I encourage you to visit our website, illinoispolicy.org. It's a great place to go to be inspired, learn some of the details behind the plan you heard tonight, and you'll find more information on actually solving the problems that you all read about in the newspapers and taking a new way forward. You've been very generous with your time tonight, and I really appreciate it. The best way you can thank me for this time here and show that you're engaged and you want to put some of these ideas to work is to sign up for our email list.